Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Roundtable with Alive Design. It's great to see you guys.
Hello. You too.
We are a team of coaches, and we'd love to be coaches in your corner. If you are looking to navigate change, overcome fear, manage your stress, or just, could benefit from some life change you're navigating, we can be there to help. So today we're talking about no fear change. And what we mean by that title, as we go through our little slideshow, is how to get to a place where you've managed the fear yourself about some change that you're facing. How do you learn to navigate fear? So, okay, let's see if we can share a screen. I think I have it ready this time. Woohoo! There it is. Okay, here's our happy robot with a cape. Yes, I'm going to go and tackle the thing I'm afraid of. So here we go. So there's a lot of research that I did, and it's in the description of the show, different ways people can give you tips about navigating fear. And here's just a couple of things as jumping off points for our conversation to follow. Maslow's hierarchy is kind of famous to talk about people at the bottom of Maslow's ladder are in survival. And, then as they navigate change, they also want to be involved in belonging. You go up a hierarchy. There's a reason that humans feel fear, and it has kept them surviving as a species. So fear isn't necessarily bad. Fear can be good. When you are involved in safety training for women, they tell you that if you feel that hair go up on the back of your neck or you have a moment of fear, just trust it and bounce. Don't go to the next restaurant with the person you just met because you may never get out of the car again. So fear can be good and keep you safe, but if you need to be super safe all the time, then maybe fear needs to be navigated for you or managed for you. As a coach, we sometimes look at the pattern of fear that someone may have. So it could be, leftover fear from a previous relationship they had or the way that they were raised, that they don't see possibility for themselves out of a narrow routine of behavior, or that they have been harmed when they did step out. And so they've stopped stepping out because harm came to them when they did. So if there's a pattern of fear, then that's where you start. If you want to navigate fear so that you can be embraced in change, because we know that change is a constant. And we're all facing a lot of change right now. So working with a coach can be helpful to navigate whatever change you may be facing. Sometimes uncertainty is enough to cause fear. I've known people who are very routine driven. They're very happy to have, a certain set way that they do things. I was reading an article about someone who said his mom hated change so much that she had a Polaroid picture in every drawer and every cupboard that said what was supposed to be in that drawer and cupboard. She didn't want anything out of place. And so this is a picture of what this drawer is supposed to look like. So for others, they're navigate a little more easily with change of routine. And for some people, routine feels like jail. They want to break their routine once in a while because it creates boredom. So having some uncertainty is okay, but navigating uncertainty is something you learn how to do for yourself. Embracing small changes is one way to step up and say, okay, I know, Jonathan, you sometimes recommend people brush their teeth with their non-dominant hand.
for a for a week and see how hard that is.
Yes. And there are people who say have tea in the morning instead of coffee, and that can be enough to upset somebody for a whole week. So, whatever your small changes are, that might be a way you can start. Also, understand your body. Sometimes if it's the pit of your stomach, wherever you feel the stress of fear, all of us are built a little differently. Just understand how your body's reporting fear, and your body keeps score of what's going on. And so, understand your own body and how it's reacting to fear. Journaling for perspective is one of the top ways this research says to resolve fear, whether it's about change. Sometimes we ask ourselves the question, am I foolish to be afraid of this thing? You don't even want to admit that you're afraid of something. And you can admit it in a journal. I know we have an upcoming challenge with Dean that'll give you prompts about how journaling can have you listen to that true internal voice and help you sort things out. Meditate for calm insight. That was another common recommendation in the research I did. Brian's upcoming challenge about, make your dreams come true, shows you different ways to use meditation and calming your mind so that you can have some insight once you settle down. You may be able to perceive things differently. Look at the fear as an observer instead of an experiencer of the fear. To plan for outcomes is another recommendation. So, what is the worst case scenario? Some people default to what's the worst that could happen? And for some people, thinking about what the worst is that could happen is not a way out of their fear. It's a way to compound it. So, but planning for, okay, what is my backup plan if my plan doesn't work, can be helpful. Remembering your why. Why do you want to go to a gym and get fit? Why do you want to reconnect with a lost friend or a parent? Why do you want to change your job? Why do you want to move out of the city? That why can be fuel for helping you navigate the change that you feel you need, but you might be fearful of doing. And then finally, to get support, to have people help you understand. Okay, well, good. You did take that small step. And what's your small step for next week? So, whether it's support from a coach, a therapist, friends, or just in the research we're sharing in the show notes, support can be really helpful. Okay, so lots of fodder for our conversation. Now we have a couple memes. This one to the left, go ahead, underestimate me. This will be fun. So sometimes you just have to stir up your courage. Here's the credible Hulk. He always cites his sources. So you need to be rational about how you're making this change and why it's okay. Then do the research and remind yourself, I have sources. It's okay for me to make this change. I like Batman ordering this food in a Chinese restaurant. I'll have the Kung Pao chicken. And then finally, we have Spider-Man questioning his life choices. Join the Avengers, they said. We have a special mission for you, they said. So, you might want to rethink that. Okay, so thank you so much for seeing our setup for this conversation today. And Brian, would you like to kick us off? You're hailing from Vietnam. You have some thoughts about navigating fear, embracing fear as we go through changes.
Yeah, let's get into it. So, one thing is, you can always break it into small steps, whatever you're trying to change. And you can also give yourself rewards for each little step that you accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good strategy for keeping yourself on track to, stick with your journey, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also good to realize that regardless of whatever results happen, you can learn and grow just from taking action, just from taking steps forward, going down the process, and there's a lot of value to that. there's a lot of learning there. So if people keep that in mind, you don't have to fear the results you get so much because it's worthwhile just to go through the process anyways. Um, yeah, and I think there's various techniques you can use to deal with fear. There's techniques to release emotions. You can let yourself feel the fear and see if it changes, see if it transforms. But I also think like sometimes it's good to just kind of have a sense of adventure about life. Just let yourself experience it, you know? Like you don't always have to try to control the experience. Like if you feel some fear, okay, feel some fear. And that's part of the adventure, you know? So if you take that attitude, I think that can help as well. Um, but yeah, like I think this touches on something that another one of those Indian gurus says. The guy's name's like Satya Ramakrishnan or something. Um, so he says courage is letting yourself feel your feelings. And I think we need to start thinking of feelings more as a verb as opposed to a noun.
Mm.
So, because the thing is, if you pay attention to your feeling, if you interact with that feeling, it changes over time. So the feeling is actually a process that's going somewhere. It's not just like an object that always stays the same. Like if you feel fear, it's not like you're always going to be permanently stuck in fear.
Mhm.
It's not a noun in that sense. It's a process which is going to change and evolve. So if you keep that in mind, I think that helps be able to kind of like work with fear or any kind of negative, feelings that you're feeling. Um, I think one reason that maybe people don't change or they have fear of change is either it conflicts with their identity or it conflicts with your social circle.
Mhm.
So you may want to change something, but you feel like your family's not going to accept you, or your girlfriend won't accept you, or your friends. So then you have to make the decision, am I just going to do this?
Mhm.
And they react how they react, or am I going to kind of like just go along to get along, Um, and also, yeah, like I was saying, like if you really are very attached to a certain identity of yourself, and then you start feeling like you want to go in a new direction, sometimes that means you're going to have to go through a process of releasing your attachment to like basically the old version of you that you're kind of have been stuck on, right? So releasing that attachment will help enable you to change and maybe get over any fear that you have around that. But I also think it's important to just realize that life equals change. I mean, life is change, right? So if you fear change, basically you fear life. I mean, because we're always changing mental states, emotional states, circumstances like all the time. Like, I mean, it's a continuous process. Um, so like mom, I think I sent you that thing where that same guy, Satya Ramakrishnan, he was saying apparently, I mean, he was saying apparently Shiva had a technique he would teach some people where he would say, see everything as fire. Now, Dean, you probably recognize that as Heraclitus,
Mhm.
um, the idea that all is fire. But one thing that's probably getting at is everything is in flux, everything is in change,
It's
like
in
flames
movement. Mhm.
are constantly flickering, right? So it's fire is more of a process. It's not like a chunk of wood. It's not just like a fixed object. It's a process that's
Mhm.
ongoing. And that's how life is. That's how emotion is as well. It's a process, right?
Mhm.
So just recognizing that can help if you feel fear. You're in a certain process right now. That's an inner process that's going on. Um, you're not going to be in that forever. So just kind of find a way to go with the process. Let me see here. I also think if you feel secure in yourself and secure in your abilities, secure in your life, it's a lot easier to take on change because you feel like you'll be able to handle it. If you don't carry that feeling within you where you're secure in your abilities or secure in yourself, um, you might struggle with change more, you know? So one thing I say sometimes, and I made a video about this for ALD, is like you've got to feel bigger than your problems. If your problems feel bigger than you, then you're stuck, right? And if there's absolutely no way you can feel bigger than your problems, then you got to turn it over to a higher power or something like that. Because somehow you need to find a big enough source of energy that can basically overcome your problems. If you're continuously feeling smaller, like a lot smaller than your problems, you're just going to be stuck there until something changes around it. Um, so I would say people should think about that as well. But yeah, it's good to just take change at your own pace. You don't have to rush yourself. You don't have to force it. Just understand if this is something that you want, then you're going to want to go through the process, right? Like it kind of comes down to, is it really worth it for you to make this change? If this is something you really want, you're going to be ready to like face what you have to face, do what you have to do to make it happen. So if there's a really big fear of change, like that might sometimes be an indicator you don't really want the change that much. Because generally, if somebody really wants something, they'll start finding a way. Um, so yeah, but yeah, again, I would just say, you know, it's good to have a sense of adventure. It's like it's fine to feel fear sometimes. Like let yourself feel the full experience of life. There's nothing wrong with that. There's tools to manage it if it gets out of control, but
I think Brian froze.
okay to go through.
There it goes.
No, there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay to go through a range of emotions when you're making changes in your life. Like that's fine. You don't have to be afraid of fear. Like you don't have to be afraid of the process and the emotions you go through. Just experience it, be open to it, you know? So yeah, that's what I would say to get
Good,
us started
good,
off here.
good perspectives. Some Greek wisdom, some ancient Indian wisdom. Yes, we'll just fit it all in there. So, Dean, it seems like you have some thoughts on the matter.
Well, I think the first thing people need to distinguish what kind of fear they're feeling, right? And that one idea I found very helpful comes from John Deloney, who is actually like a radio call-in counselor,
Okay.
and he talks about your anxiety as an alarm bell. And so sometimes when we feel afraid, it's an alarm bell going on, right? And and his illustration is most people when they hear the alarm go off, they they sit back down on the couch and turn the TV up louder, right? So maybe that.
Right.
And so
What's that noise that's bothering me?
a good example of this would be somebody who's like, "Well, I'm really anxious because I'm afraid I'll lose my place where I live." And why would you be anxious about that? Because I can't pay the rent. Well, why can't you pay the rent? Well, I spent $900 this month on comic books and candy, right? That in that case, your fear is an alarm bell telling you to change your behavior.
Yes.
And so the very so it's so I think one way of dealing with fear is to try to catalyze it or to change it from a feeling that makes you want to withdraw to a feeling that makes you want to take action, right? And so a lot of times anxiety can do that for you. It can make you say, whoa, I need to cut back on my comic book budget or whatever it is. I need to do whatever this alarm is telling. I need to stop doing whatever this alarm is telling me to stop doing or start doing whatever it's telling me I'm neglecting. Okay. But there are, but then there are other kinds of fears too. So I know people who just kind of live in fear of other people's reactions. they live around or with people, or they're in relationships where their boundaries are violated.
Mhm.
And honestly, sometimes I think the best thing those people could do to stop being so afraid. Now, let me be careful when I say this. Sometimes people in those situations are in real danger, right?
Yes.
And so if that's the case, then this is not necessarily the best advice. But
Mhm.
if you're in a situation where someone is just like routinely verbally rude to you, or you
Mhm.
have a coworker, sometimes the best solution to stop feeling afraid is to get mad.
Anger's
And
a step up. Yeah.
yes, and to say, well, I'm afraid about to be around this person because this person always makes fun of me. And that's a good example. Your coworker who makes fun of you, right? Well, the day you get mad about it and you show that anger, it'll probably stop.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times, one way to sort of go through life with less fear is to allow yourself to be the kind of person who has an appropriate level of anger that's appropriately directed and when it's needed. You can't, I guess my point is, you can't cope with a situation that calls for anger with fear. And a lot of people try to do that.
Yes.
And so that's one thing to say. I think, too, it's helpful probably for people to try to distinguish between anxiety that is related to some actual circumstance and fear that seems more existential. Like I don't really know what it's about, but I'm afraid of being alive.
Mhm.
And that's probably related to not to your present situation, but some past situation
Yeah.
where your nervous system got activated in a way and it hasn't ever really calmed down.
Mhm.
And there are things to be done for that, but I think the first step is to identify what your fear is saying and what kind of fear it is.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful. There's so many different ways people deal with fear. And I think if you're feeling the fear, it's a really helpful clue. Like pay attention. Like as you say, it's an alarm bell. So
Mhm.
you're not wrong for feeling fear. It could be that your fear is outsized for what you're actually facing from other people's opinions. But I think that's where journaling, a meditation practice, other things to get some perspective. Talk with someone you don't know well and run by your situation. Am I crazy? Is this unreasonable for me to say you don't get to slam doors? You don't get to yell at the top of your voice to me every day? Is this reasonable to set boundaries like this? Whatever it is for you, get some perspective about, and is this fear could because fear does keep us alive. It takes us into survival when it's necessary. When it's not necessary and we're in survival, now we're leading a difficult life. We're afraid of, things that we could actually handle. There's a component, Jonathan, of accountability with the fear. And I'd love to hear your perspectives about, because you certainly have clients that have fear about trying to handle something they haven't been able to handle yet. Um, well, let's face it. What are you afraid of? Is it something that's really out of your control or something you just don't know how to navigate control of? Is this really outside of your control? The hurricane came and scraped your house off the lot. That was outside of your control. But if it's, I don't like my boss and he's mean to me, yeah, that's within your control. You can go get another job. You could straighten it out with your boss. So, Jonathan, when you talk with people, how do you help them navigate kind of coming to terms with fear as they go through change?
Well, fear is false expectation appearing real.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it can get as real as it can possibly get, and that's when it causes us trouble because I have had my share of fears.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's imaginary, you can feel it on every cell of your body. So I know the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, what I like to do with myself and with anyone that wants my help or needs my help is to transmute the fear. So I made a note because what Dean was saying, it was about getting mad.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example of transmutation. But you cannot just stop at getting mad. You can keep transmuting it as, and actually it can be done so fast. Like you can be from fear to joyful or like peaceful feeling or like a baseline experience so fast if you just allow yourself to um, do the work. Like there are ways to change from fear to not be in fear so fast. So yeah, there are ways to do that with my work, but more importantly, I would say for anybody that is experiencing like a, let's say like a fear. I know some humans, they have like panic attacks or like, what's the name of this thing that when somebody is like extremely afraid of something that they cannot even like see what it is?
Like
There's a name
phobia.
for it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Phobias. So some humans, they have like extreme, very, very extreme phobias. So with those kinds of minds, they are more subtle minds. So you have to work with them in a very subtle way, because it's a very traumatic experience. Like even in their own imagination, they're like actually suffering, which is quite interesting. I mean, it is interesting. But yeah, so transmutation. I just like to transmute. Getting angry, it's I would say the one of the baby steps. It can be like you get angry and then you shift from fear to like you're not in fear, because fear is very destructive. So yeah, I just like to transmute it. And then let's say, for example, once the client has actually felt the experience, instead of being in a whole complete like panic state, it gets to experience this state of like joyfulness and blissfulness, and it's just there like relaxed, getting to feel some like, you know, good stuff in their bodies. Then you can actually do the work and switch, subconsciously you can switch from fear and kind of like implant the seed to, you're going to be fine, everything is going to be okay. Every time you feel like this, which is possible that you're going to encounter something, who knows what might comes at you from the exterior world. But even if you die, you will die fine. You will not be in fear. You will die. Oh yeah, no problem. But you will not be afraid. So it's it is possible, and it is a great way. I mean, that's what I do. So for anybody that is interested, here I am.
Yeah. Well, it is so fascinating, the different things that people are fearful for. And usually when you start to pull the thread about, tell me why that makes you so scared, or what does it feel like in your body when you feel the fear? And then have you had this happen before? Oh, I'm afraid that my boyfriend's going to leave me. My girlfriend's going to break up with me. The last couple of people I dated, that's what happened. So,
You
and,
know, so I forgot to say something
mhm,
before I forget, because you reminded me.
great.
But it's true. Hu- Humans sometimes, they let their emotions go so wild without even thinking about the consequences of it. It's
Mhm.
important to keep them like calm.
Mhm. Well, to be captain of your own ship, to be responsible for your own behavior, your own life. And there are times where you might be struck with fear because of uncertainty. So, that's one of the key points is it because you don't know how it's going to turn out? Welcome to life. We don't know how it's going to turn out. And so, did the test come back negative? We think that's a good thing. Instead of your significant other breaking up with you, they propose to you. We think that's a good thing. But Brian and I have had conversations in the past that sometimes the root of fear about whatever it is, work, relationships, money, is an attachment to an outcome. We've decided we want this outcome, and now we're fearful that we won't do the right steps to get there. It won't come about fast enough. People won't think well of us because we missed the deadline. We didn't win the battle, whatever it looks like. The outcome did not happen in our desired time frame or method. And so a lot of people are in layoffs. A lot of people are looking for work. A lot of people were surprised and now engaged in uncertainty because, wow, I had a job and I had a paycheck and now I don't have a job. And I've got severance that's going to last for a period of time. And what's going to happen? I have to now go have this outcome of replacing that income or finding another job. And so navigating uncertainty, getting some support around that can be really helpful. I'm sure that all of you, and we'll share some more thoughts about this, have said to a client, well, how did you find the job you just lost? Like, tell me what the process was when you got that job. So we already know you know how to find a job and get hired because you found a job and got hired. So you have some pattern of success. What would replicating that look like? How would we do the same thing? We already know you've done it at least once. So I think there's a concept, with religious scholars, spiritual people to say, if you can be an observer of what you're feeling, you can get a little separation from the feeling. The feeling won't be so controlling, so dominating. And I read one person who said, what if fear moved through you like a breeze? What if you just watched the fear move through you and then dissipate? It doesn't control you, you control you. And the fear comes and then it goes. But, happiness can also come and go. Wistfulness or sadness can come and go. But the emotions that you experience don't have to control your reality. They can be a part of it until they're not. And so as you gain a strong center and do for yourself what works best for you, meditation, journaling, walking in exercise, having a support group of people, whatever that looks like, find what works for you so that changes, which absolutely will come in life, absolutely will come in life, you know how to navigate them. You've built a GPS that says, oh, this is a time of change. I know what to do for me about that. Any other thoughts, you guys?
I have a couple. I think, yes, I think one thing we want to distinguish between is the feeling of fear and the adoption of fear as an integral part of your mindset. So so that even when you aren't necessarily feeling fear in your body, you've adopted an attitude toward life that basically assumes that it's scary and that you should avoid, right? So even if you're not feeling afraid,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of fearfulness as an attitude will undermine everything. I think too, a lot of times fear is a feeling that people are ashamed to have,
Yes.
and that the way to deal with a lot of your fear is just to say to whoever you're involved with, this is scary to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and that a lot of times what bothers people is not so much the fear, but the shame that they feel about being afraid. And that if you can just own it and say, I'm a person and this is frightening to me,
Mm-hmm.
then then at the very least you drain the shame off of it and the fear itself might be reduced. When we were taught, and then I think too, it's reasonable to think like you might go through life with unreasonable fears, and that's okay, so long as they don't hold you back from what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when Jonathan was talking about phobias, um I have terrible claustrophobia. Like, um, I can't watch a movie where a character is in a small space.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes, if I allow myself to start imagining myself in a small space, I get all just from thinking about it, I get panicked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But here's an example. So many years ago, I lived in Massachusetts and I was touring with some people a historic home there.
Mm-hmm.
And surprise, surprise, there's a secret staircase from the kitchen to the upstairs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the guy's like, oh, everyone can go on up. And I turn around, I look up the stairwell, and the stairwell is secret and hidden because it's about 2 feet wide, and the
Yeah.
walls. And
Yeah.
I was
It's
like,
a
no,
cupboard.
I was like, no, No, there's nothing up there that would be worth walking up those stairs for me, right? And so there are just, and I think there's no, I don't have any
There,
like memory of being,
there wasn't, but there could be something that it's
but
worth it.
someone can tell me about it. But I was never like as a child, I was never trapped under the house. I was never locked in a closet. I think that for some of us, these phobias are just like deeply wired into our bodies or something.
Mhm.
And sometimes if you have a fear like that, just learning to cope with it is enough. Like,
Yeah.
so what does my severe claustrophobia mean for me? All it means is I don't go spelunking, right?
Yes, I
I
avoid caves.
Yes. But in general, it doesn't hold me back from anything I actually want to do.
Mhm.
And so one, I guess all that to say, part of an approach to fear is a kind of self-acceptance,
Mhm.
right? So sometimes you just have fears that you just like, yeah, I have this phobia and I'm just going to live with it. I'm just going to avoid 2 foot wide staircases or whatever.
I want to mention a client that I had who was uber capable. She was in the middle of a merger. I was working with her as an executive coach to help her navigate that. She was going to stay on with the new larger company. She was recalibrating her team, what her role would be. It was all very exciting. And so capable in that part of her life. And then her husband got a bad diagnosis. And now it looked like her family was going to blow apart. She was going to maybe lose her husband. In that area of her life, she was much less capable navigating emotions, navigating these kinds of out of control outcomes. And so, one of the things I encourage people to do is just give yourself 3 plans. What's the best case scenario? Oh, okay, the tests come back and it's no big deal. The worst case scenario, okay, he has 6 months to live. Now what do we do? And then some middle ground. Well, they need more tests and maybe chemo will nip it in the bud, or, let's just plan for 3 outcomes. Let's lay the plans on the table. We're going to face each outcome right now, fully face it. Because then when you get the answer, you already know what to do. You don't have to have a pending ledge of fear that you're going to have to peer over now that you have the diagnosis. Now you already did the thinking, you already did the planning, and then run those plans by somebody. Talk out loud about, okay, if this happens, I think this is what I'll do, what I'll explore. If this happens, is there anything I haven't thought through? And so, is there anybody I need to reach out to get help with? I'm going to talk to you every week, dear friend, about how this is going on because, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. So, we have areas of strong capability, and somehow these things come up to us in areas where maybe we don't have strong capability. That's where this trouble shows up. And so, make some plans regardless of the outcomes, and then you'll have a head start when you hear what the outcome is. I did get the layoff. I didn't get the layoff. Well, I didn't get the layoff, but there's 2 more rounds. And so it still might happen. So I'm going to start looking for a job now. Whatever that looks like, you can make some plans, face your fears, and then whatever happens, you're more prepared than if you just bite your fingernails and, you know, hold on to dear hope and not do anything about it.
That's true, because the fear sometimes can be like a monster,
Yes.
like a we. But if we walk into the monster or towards the monster, we realize that it's like the cookie monster. It's like a cute monster. It's,
Mm-hmm.
it is a monster, but it's a cute monster. So
Mm-hmm.
it it takes a lot of courage. That's true, to walk towards it, but it's worth it. It is worth it, because the other option is so miserable and
Yeah.
it's quite unbearable. So there's no other choice at the end, isn't it? It Than like facing the
One of the
monster.
things that you mentioned, Brian, is small steps. So I've worked with some women who find themselves dating again after a divorce, or they're a widow or whatever has happened, and they're dealing with the fear of being alone. And they come back with horror stories about online dating, the things that people have said. And they're like, how did we know the world is so crazy? You know, I'm never going to have what I had with my person who's now no longer in my life for whatever reason. And facing the fear of being alone in small steps can be, you take yourself out to lunch, sit at a table by yourself. You'll find out it doesn't kill you. You know, take yourself to the ballet, whatever it is you like to do. Go make, you know, a friend who wants to go wine tasting with you. Whatever it is that your hobbies are, resume them. Do it on your own, do it with other friends, and you'll find a life awaits you. You don't have to start living again once you have another partner in your life. I think too, Jonathan, you help a lot of people in dating. It can be helpful to just say, ask your friend, set me up with someone. And I don't have to have this be the love of my life. It's a no risk date. You know,
Like a training, yes. Is
I'm
it
gonna
like
buy
a
her
training?
lunch. We're gonna talk
Yes.
about our favorite movies. We both go home. Nobody got hurt. But you just sort of get back in the rhythm of, okay, I'm just gonna go out and try some small things. Any other ideas about how people might take small steps to kind of face things that they're a little fearful of?
So let's say if they are extremely afraid of, well, this is when it gets tricky because, for example, Dean has a fear that has there's no reason for the fear behind the scenes, but for him to explore that fear, it will take, like, why will he do that, right?
Mhm.
It will be a waste of his time because all he has
Right.
to do is
It
just
does,
not to put himself
it doesn't
into that
impact his life. Right.
I just have
yes.
to avoid caves.
No
So
caves. Mhm.
so for somebody else that wants to take a step, it will be a fear that is im impeding something to happen for them. So the first step is recognizing what are you afraid of. Now, if you cannot recognize what are you afraid of,
Mhm.
so the first step, baby step, recognize what are you afraid of.
Mhm.
Second step, um, once you recognize what are you afraid of, or actually, if you cannot recognize what are you afraid of, then actually a hypnosis session can be useful
Mhm.
because you can actually discover what is causing you to awaken your like all your system, your nervous system, and putting it on fight mode. Like, what is it? So we can go deep and actually find out what is it if
Mhm.
you do not know. If
Mhm.
you know, it makes the job easier because if you know what is causing you
Mhm.
to have the experience of fear, then you can, another baby step, it doesn't matter what is happening. If you put your, this I learned in Asia, if you put your left hand close to your right hand, it centers you in a way that it looks stupid, but if you just do
Mhm.
it, uh, it's another baby step. Let's say you're feeling extremely afraid. This will help you. Why? Don't ask me. Ask the brahmacharis in Asia. They know
Yes,
the science behind it,
that's
but I know
right.
it works.
You close the
So
energy circuit. Yeah.
something happens, right? And it helps. So yeah, definitely under hypnosis, I can help somebody find the root of the fear. And if they are willing to do the work, we can transmute that fear so that they don't have to live with that weight. Because at the end of the day, it's like a waste of energy having to deal with fears that can be easy to take care of. Like most fears are actually easy to take care of because their base is nonsense. So that is the beauty of it. Actually, it's great news.
When you come through the other side, sometimes you chastise yourself. Why was I so afraid of that? And that's not a useful exercise. But if you can find a low stakes way, like set me up with someone and we'll have lunch. Like it's
Or
easy.
like, let's say somebody's afraid, talking about fear. What happens with men, which I know perfectly. Let's say they are terrified of like meeting a new woman.
Mhm.
Now, the reason behind the fear, it's more biological than actually social. Because back in the day, if I wanted to meet a brand new woman from another tribe and introduce myself, I might get killed by somebody, like some guy from that tribe. So the fear was, if I introduce myself to this woman, I might get killed by this other guy that lives on that tribe. But the fear, it's still behind the scenes. So that's why when somebody walks up to a woman to introduce himself, hello, my name is, or whatever the style that you like, and they feel this fear, but they don't know why. It's a woman. Why are you afraid of a woman? I don't know. Okay, let me show you why, and then we can go back and see. So a baby step for that, if you're afraid, like let's say for example, somebody that is afraid of walking up to somebody like beautiful, they can practice with an ugly one at the like a cashier. Somebody that they don't like. Hey, hello, my name is. Just practice. I mean, not an ugly one, but like not as an attractive
Someone
as.
who's not your type. Let's go with
Not a
that.
10, not a 10 or something.
Not your
But like,
type.
yes, exactly. Not like somebody that is not your type, but just practice. By the time you confront the person that is, or like you have in front, not confront. By the time you find someone that you really like, it's going to be natural. Like, hey, with a twist because it gets different, but the practice is the same.
I think if you haven't looked for a job in years, and certainly we've probably worked with people, I have, and other coaches on our team have, who haven't had a job interview in 10 years or haven't, needed to look for a job in 5 years. And the job world has changed because everything has changed. Change is the only constant. And a low stakes way to practice interviewing is to reconnect with people in your industry, have lunch with them, schedule a virtual coffee chat, and say, well, based on the layoffs, I might be looking, in the next month or two. So, who does the hiring at your organization? Would you take a look at my resume and see if it's if it's the kind of resume that's modern enough to qualify me? What is the hiring practice where you are now? Do you know of openings where I could start exploring before I actually really need it? Find a low stakes way to do sort of industry informational interviews before you actually have to be in front of someone who could potentially hire you and you need a job. So I think working with a coach or having support to say, here's ways that we might try these smaller steps to get you acclimated to navigating this fear. Once we see the possibility of the outcome we're seeking, wow, okay, well, I've been on 5 dates and I think I can do this. People have looked at my resume and they referred me to a hiring manager. This is probably going to be okay. I'm navigating my way out of it. Brian, as you said, when you get into action, it changes. If this is going to lead me somewhere, maybe the first stop isn't the stop I want or the second stop, but I'm going through the motions and it's going to lead me somewhere. Well, let's chat about
Yes.
final thoughts. Brian,
Yes.
do you have some? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a while back in the conversation, Mom, you mentioned walking. And do you guys remember Kevin Trudeau?
Was
He, he,
the who's that guy?
Was kind of a health guru for a while.
he came out with a book called like Natural Cures that was
Yeah.
running infomercials for a while. I think it was Natural Cures they don't want you to know about.
Right.
And
Hidden secrets.
sold a bunch of books. Interestingly, he's actually a pool fan too. He tried to create a professional pool tour, which didn't work out. But I just saw a clip of him talking on Instagram, and he said, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, he was like, there was no such thing as depression or fear or any of this kind of stuff. He's like, you just said, I'm going for a walk. That was it. You just said, I'm going for a walk. You walk it off. You come home. It's home. You go back to your routine, So I think that's interesting. Walking can actually be really good as a way to work out emotions. Actually, that's true. Going for a walk, but yeah. I mean, that was pretty much all I wanted to add in there. I'm not sure if you wanted me to comment on something else.
No, no, no. I just, if you had any final thoughts and then how people get a hold of you.
Yeah, alifedesign.org, and my Instagram is Special K Coaching.
Very good. Good. Well, and I think we've had some good insights today. Dean, did you have some final thoughts and how people get a hold of you? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Let me try that, not muted. I would say two things. One is that I think I touched on it, but ultimately, the answer to problematic fear is either action or self-acceptance.
Mhm.
And if your person is like really struggling with kind of well, almost what we might call malignant fear, like fear that's just crippling to you and it's not related to anything else. I think the first step of that is just accepting that that's your situation.
Mhm.
I can be found at deanabbott.com, at alifedesign.org, or on Twitter at deanabbott.
Wonderful. Good. How about you, Jonathan? Any final thoughts and how do people find you?
I know that fear is as real as you allow it to be. You can find me at alivedesign.org, Jonathan R. Coaching on Instagram, and Jonathan R. Coaching on TikTok, as well as my Gmail, which is jonathanrcoaching@gmail.com.
Oh, very good. Well, it was been fun to explore how people engage with fear as they have to make a change, whether that change has been imposed upon them through circumstances or whether they just internally need to make a change and are trying to navigate that. Coaching helps. Our team would like to be in your corner. Thanks, everyone, for visiting today, and we'll see you next time.